Maryville, and today we're going to start our community assessment research. This is also called a Windshield Survey, and this is commonly used in all survey or service professions rather, to get a really good idea of who our population is and how best to serve their needs. So I'm going to start off my research, as always, at the library website, maryville.edu/library. I'm also going to want to make sure that I have this resource bookmarked. Research is an iterative or trial and error process, so it's really helpful to get back to the library homepage again and again. And of course, you'll notice the Discovery search bar, and that does search for everything in the library, but it's not the best way to find the government information that we usually need for our Windshield survey. I'm going to scroll down a little bit more. Notice there's always 24/7 research help available through chat, but you can also email me directly anytime at reference@maryville.edu. Again, that's reference@maryville.edu, and I can always help you at that point as well. That's definitely the best way to get a hold of me, and I check that well into the evening each night. We want to get to a subject guide in particular. So let's go ahead and look at research help, where we have options for our research subject guides. If you're having trouble navigating library resources, we have a general tutorial, and again, that reference email. Some basic databases that might be helpful, specifically New York Times might be a really good resource to look at. St. Louis Business Journal, you also have a subscription to through the library. Flipster is a great resource, and that's going to provide you with access to popular magazines. Not necessarily what we want for this project, though. I'm going to want to locate the nursing subject guide that is along the left-hand side here. And it's going to bring me all 6 subject guides on nursing. I can select community assessment from here. I can also select just a general nursing research guide. This is another good page to make sure that I have bookmarked. It has links to most of my favorite nursing databases, links to the ILLiad or Interlibrary Loan homepage, the up-to-date homepage, resources on avoiding plagiarism, further readings that you might find helpful, citation help, of course, again, that community assessment LibGuide, evidence-based practice research guide, and nursing theorist research guide. I also have tutorials on how to do advanced and basic searches in the most popular databases. But we want a community assessment. We're doing a Windshield survey. And this is a guide that will help you find information on your desired community. And it is designed specifically for students that are in the public health nursing course. I have an ebook chapter, Calculating Public and Community Health Programs, that is linked here, as well as a really great article on community assessment, which is called A Critical Skill for the Future, Community Assessment. And that is from 1995, and I know that seems a little bit dated for a lot of you guys, but it is a more of a sociological look at the importance of community assessments in general. So you'll definitely want to go ahead and check out both these resources before getting too deep into selecting your community. I also have links to census data, as well as other information on Windshield surveys. But let's take a look on our left-hand side. I have an option for a sample community assessment, links to almost all U.S. Census data that you'll need, links to health statistics that you will also want to look up, some other data, And then I put together some links that are specific to the city of St. Louis and its suburbs. And you will find that really, really helpful, especially if you're doing a subset of St. Louis City. Say you want to look at specifically the Central West End or Carondelet. You can do that easily through some of these St. Louis links. Let's browse this sample community assessment, though. It is done generally on the Granite City, Illinois area, and it's not a complete report that you would submit to your class, but is a really great example of what you would include in it. And this is information that it comes from books, periodical articles, the online databases, websites. Almost all cities and neighborhoods have some type of website that is available. This could also include an online directory. United States Census data is insanely important for any good research that is Windshield Survey based. We also have an option for interviews, which are always wonderful to have, as well as archives and personal collections. All small areas especially will have some kind of local archive. You just kind of have to poke around and ask about it. For example, I mentioned Carondelet earlier. Carondelet Public Library in South St. Louis has this wealth of information available in the archives there. So just you have to sometimes hunt a little bit, but that information is always out there. Your job is to play detective and get it all out and into a wonderful research paper for your instructor. So I just have introductory remarks about my actual town. I have an article that appeared in the St. Louis Business Journal referenced. I want to go over the population and demographics. I definitely want to know the birth and death rate. So that is always available, usually through the state or county level, and you'll just have to use Google to discover that. And again, I can help you locate those resources as well. Religion is an important thing, so look at a Google directory of churches or religious institutions in your area, and that will give you a really good idea of what kind of folks are living in that neighborhood. You also want to take note of the economics, so is it a thriving or a struggling community? We want to know what kind of things folks there might struggle with or not have issues with. This is something really important to notice. Are there shopping centers or neighborhood stores? This can be easily discovered using Google Maps. Many areas in inner cities are virtual food deserts. They may not have adequate grocery stores like you may be used to. So keep that in mind and keep note of whether or not there's a grocery store that will have a huge impact on the health and nutrition of any patient that you're seeing. Especially, there's quite a few in St. Louis City itself, where unless you have access to a car, getting to a grocery store is nearly impossible. So take note of that, and that is definitely going to have a huge impact on any population that you're serving. If you can, definitely drive through the area that you're doing a report on. Do you see weird or sketchy characters? Do you see trash, abandoned cars? Is there a lot of for sale signs around? These are all kind of connotations that lead us to believe that there might be some issues that are deeper going on in that area. Are there industrial places nearby? Perhaps there's a chemical plant or a coal fire burning power plant nearby. Those things would also have huge impacts on the nearby population. You'll also want to look at books on the history of your community if possible. This can usually be found through Maryville's library, but you can also try a local library as well. This is you can also use the interlibrary loan or Mobius process using Maryville's library as well, and we can get you pretty much any print book that's at an academic library in the state of Missouri, sent to St. Louis campus of Maryville. So again, we have the history, some great photos. We want to know about the health and social services that are available for each of these locations. What mental health facilities are available. That's also going to be something that we'll want to take note of. And Google Maps is a great place, again, to find that information. Are there homeless or abuse shelters available? Also, what kinds of clinics, hospitals, or doctors are there? How close is the nearest hospital from the city center? Is there an urgent care clinic available? Are there even child care facilities available? And again, Google Maps is definitely the way to go to find that information. What are the political and natural boundaries of the community? So where I grew up in Florissant, the natural boundary lines for that community were the river. So there was a creek that ran through Florissant that divided Florissant from Ferguson, as well as the river on the opposite side, the Missouri River. So those are the kinds of things that they want to know. Your resource or your chosen location might not have a natural boundary, and that's okay. Sometimes the boundary can be a highway or a actual road, and you'll just want to take note of that. Places you can look for information for this, again, would be Google Maps or Google Earth. Zillow is oddly enough a great place to look. And just think about other things that might have influenced the boundaries of that community. Why is it why is it where it is? And how is the neighboring community affected? What does that boundary line look like? And again, what highways are nearby? That's very important. Access to around the city and other employment. What's the physical environment? Is it industrial, rural? And noting the air quality, which can be found through this link, is also very, very important. How old is the housing in the area? Are there any parks? Almost all cities have some kind of parks and recreation district, or at least some kind of website that would address that, perhaps on the city website. Are there police visible in the community? You'll also want to look at the police and fire departments for that area. And do you feel safe in the community? If you actually get to drive around your community, you'll want to know and take note of the way that you feel while you're there. We'll also want to take note of any schools that are in the area. How good are those schools actually performing? That can also be found easily online. General transportation that's available. Do you see any options for walking paths or riding bikes? Again, what about public transportation? And that includes highways. Press. Many small areas will have their own community-based newspaper. Granite City has the Granite City Press Record. There's also the county journals for the county of St. Louis. So those would be good things to look at. These are often found for free around the entryways of grocery stores in the area. So check out a grocery store in your neighborhood that you're doing your research project on, and see what kind of free literature is available there, and that's going to give you a good idea, again, about the resources that are available in that community. And then finally, always look at recreation. So are there parks, are there recreational fields? Is there places that are safe for children to play and get out and exercise in a healthy manner? And then also maybe take note of who is using the facilities. It might not be the children, so depending on where you are. So it's very interesting to take note of that. So each of these are hyperlinks that will take you to a similar search for any of that information that is found there. So I can get to church lists, Google's directory, all by selecting those links. I can select my US Census and get more information on the census. In general, the census is performed in depth every 10 years. The last major census occurred in 2010, but there is in-between year counts. Do try and go ahead and stick on 1 year. So you might get a lot of information that is maybe seems more up to date, but you want to use information all from about the same time. So if you can get census information from 2010, it's still going to be really applicable today, even though it is a little bit further on down the road from 2010. So to get our census information, we'll want to get really familiar with the American Fact Finder website. I'm just selecting open a new window. And this allows me to just easily search any community that I want. Let's say like Oswego, Oregon. That's where we're doing our population search on. And I get all this really great reliable source information, and it is coming from the 2010 census. And I can see that Lake Oswego has about 36,000 folks, of course very important information to place in my paper. I have ways to look at just the information on the age of the folks who live there. So the median age is 45. The business and industry, which is available in that town. Education, 98.5% have a high school graduates or higher. That's a very high number, so a very educated population. Information on their governments, so I can get straight to those government websites by using this web page. The housing units that are available, so this would be, how old is the housing stock, what types of housing is available, what types of people live in these houses. Those will all be found in this information. And again, these are all hyperlinks to tons of information on any of these topics. The income, again, Lake Oswego, I picked an odd one. It has an unusually high median household income of almost $90,000 a year. So by chance I was working with this population, after seeing that education rate and this household income rate, that would give me a good idea that my population has really good access to healthcare in general, food, exercise, good clean air, probably, and this is probably going to be a pretty pleasant place to live with this level of household income. This would unfortunately be the opposite by chance this was a much lower number. The poverty line is generally considered to be around $30,000 a year. That's what the government says you really need to scrape by, especially if you're a family. So close to 90,000 is very high. Anything below 30,000 is not necessarily undesirable by any means, but your population might be struggling in some way or another if you see a median household income that is low. Origins of the folks who live there and their languages spoken also very easily accessible here. The poverty level, so again, that's folks who make less than that $30,000 in each year. That's 7.2%. That number will always seem a little higher than you'd think, and that is partly because of folks who are retired are still taken in on the census information. So they may just be living off of savings or small investments and not necessarily having a household income of a certain level. But again, I have many more statistics and census information that I would need that is on that topic of poverty in my area. Race and Hispanic origin is also available in detail. The veterans who are in the area are also a good thing to take note of. We have nearly 2,000 veterans in our area, and while some veterans get help through sources such as the actual government, Veterans do still use standard healthcare services, so do always take note of the veteran status of your community. And I'm just going to select back to get back to my community assessment census data page. And this is just giving me more information about the census and also links to find census data by the actual street address and how to use guided and advanced search features. Health statistics are very important, so go ahead and make sure you're taking note of that. St. Louis County, where Maryville's located, publishes the Community Health Needs Assessment, and that would definitely be something to look at. And your community probably has something similar. So you might want to use Google and do a health needs assessment and see what comes up. There's also going to be statewide information, possibly on community assessment. Missouri in particular maintains a great page called Missouri Information for Community Assessment, which is linked here as well. Other data, crime is very important to take note of, as I've mentioned a few times, education, environment. Really, this is just a checklist of things that you really must have. Try the Crime in the United States database in order to get FBI information. And then finally, those St. Louis specific links that you'll find really helpful if you're doing a St. Louis-based research project. I have St. Louis City Census, St. Louis City neighborhoods, so I can get really specific into those neighborhoods of the city of St. Louis, because they all are very different, as you know. So I can actually look at my different city neighborhoods and do a community assessment specifically on a community. So let's say that we wanted to do it on Fairground. I could select Fairground, find out who the alderman is, neighborhood improvement specialists, get a great map. So that's where I can find out where my boundaries are. I can look at the parks that are in the area, and I can get either the census data from 2010 specifically for my neighborhood, or I can go visit Geo St. Louis for that specific neighborhood data again. GeoCensus St. Louis is an amazing resource that will allow me to get very neighborhood specific information. So let's say I want to do Carondelet here, and I want to know the number of vacant buildings. Now hit submit, and then get a good idea of the number of vacant buildings in an area over the last few decades. So total there was 29 that were vacant in the Carondelet neighborhood. 27 were residential and 6 were commercial. So this lets me know that there is a unfortunately high number of vacant buildings. However, this is greatly increased over the late 90s, early 2000s, when we had close to 40 and high 30 numbers of residential and commercial properties that were abandoned. I'm just hopping back to my St. Louis County links. Again, my St. Louis County Health Department website is invaluable. St. Louis City has its own health department website. I also have Missouri State Census data and just some miscellaneous topics as well. Again, you can always use this live chat 24/7 if you have any questions, but definitely make sure that you're using me as well. You can email me at reference@maryville.edu, and I can help you further along with your community assessment / Windshield Survey. Thank you so much. Happy searching, and don't get too frustrated. Just go ahead and send me an email. I'm happy to help. Bye.